Welcome to ProTalks by Elevate, and this is me, Anne Benjamin. And on today's podcast, we have Elizabeth Issac, the founder of Gunam Beauty. So, Elizabeth, I'm very curious to know how did you come about this word Gunam?
Okay.
For the non-Malayalis, it must be something new because it actually means goodness and virtue in Malayalam. So, how did you come about this word?
So, a couple of things. I mean, as you rightly said, it translates to goodness, quality, benefit, virtue, right? In our language. And Natla, you always hear people say, like, it's I mean, we use it all the time.
Yeah.
So, I started working on the brand when I was living in France. So, we had moved back, I mean, come back temporarily. This was the first of the COVID lockdown. So, I was trying to decide where I'd be launching the brand and all of those things. So I had to make a decision on how much like Indianness I wanted the brand to have, right? So it was ultimately I decided that the name itself should represent where I'm from. So and yeah, it obviously has nice meaning and with its origins in Sanskrit. So in the south you have you have gunam, and again, even in Ayurveda, it's a term that's used prominently. So
So, you came about this
yes,
name?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. Thankfully, I only hear good things. I mean, about it. But yeah, I'm happy, and it's a word that's rather easy to pronounce as well, and looks nice on the bottle
And
too.
how are people accepting the name?
Yeah,
Do people
everyone's
ask you when they hear about it?
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily. Even funnily enough, even people here will ask me like, "How do you pronounce it?" So I just said it's the Malayalam word
Oh,
Gunam,
Gunam.
like because is it Gunam? So I hear different pronunciations,
Pronunciation, yeah.
obviously, but yeah, it's been nice, and like I said, I often hear like people say it's a nice name. So yeah,
Well, it is.
thank you.
And I know that you've been having a lot of skin troubles during your teens.
Yeah,
From there to moving to Paris
yeah,
to work with a cosmetic ingredient supplier.
yeah.
What made you come to a point where you realized that you have to start Gunam Beauty?
Okay, so that's a really long story because you're talking about a span of
Yeah,
over 10
yeah.
years. So I started breaking out as a teen, and you expect it to stop at some point, but I'm one of the lucky ones, I suppose. It didn't stop, hasn't stopped yet. So it was always for me. Like the initial few years was going to dermatologists, like figuring out what
Yeah.
will work, and
And
everyone
that's
has
anyways the
different.
first step anybody
Yeah,
will.
exactly. So, and obviously you have a lot of people giving you advice too, right? So when you're going for weddings to, be like, oh, you're more
True,
like more So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So so when I left to college to the US, so I was, so I was hoping, okay, maybe there someone will have the solution for me. So unfortunately, I experienced a lot of really severe side effects
Oh,
to acne medication. So,
okay.
at one point of time, I was on an oral antibiotic. So, I ended up, so after like prolonged use, so 2-3 months of using the antibiotic, like fluid started building up in my brain. So, I really
Oh.
didn't know what the reason was. Just one fine evening, like my vision started getting impaired. So I was seeing like double vision,
Oh,
and
okay.
then I had like the worst headaches continuously. So I think 2-3 days in, I had to go get like a brain MRI done. And I was living there alone at this time. So it was really scary. And obviously, anytime like
Yeah,
any
when you
Google
Google,
search was
yeah.
resulting in like the worst of, outcomes. So went to do a brain MRI. They couldn't really figure out what the reason was. So this doctor figured out that this reaction that I was having, a 1 in a million reaction,
Oh,
so this antibiotic was causing the fluid to build up in my brain. So I ended up missing my finals. I couldn't even look at light source properly. Evenings were especially bad. Fast forward to Paris, I moved there to
to
work
work,
at this
yeah.
cosmetics ingredient supplier. So again, I was looking at all of these ingredients, and I was thinking a lot of which I used, and ingredients that helped me on a day to day manage my acne. And then I was like, okay, a lot of these ingredients are being either sourced by my family's business here, or like they're being manufactured, made into some
Here,
kind of oil,
you have
etc.
easy access to
Yeah,
it, yeah.
exactly. So I was like, why don't I think about building my own product? So that's where it started, because I never really thought I would become an entrepreneur. It was never really, how some people like always dream of it or aspire to become
True.
or envision that for themselves, but just wasn't my case. So it was more by accident, but in hindsight, it was all sort of, meant to be,
It
I
just worked
suppose.
out
Yeah,
well.
exactly. Yeah.
Abha, you can tell us something a little about your education,
Yeah.
since you already mentioned that,
Yeah,
you were
sure.
doing a.
So yeah, schooling was here, and I went to Choice until grade 6, and then I moved to Global Public School after. So, and then I left when I was 17 for college. So I went to New York. So I went to Parsons, the New School for Design.
Okay.
So I did a program called Strategic Design and Management and Economics at the New School.
From there to Gunam Beauty was
Yeah,
when did
so
you
yeah,
change
so
it?
it was. So I started working in fashion predominantly when I was in New York. So I was doing internships in fashion. So I was working for Ralph Lauren Corporation, Narciso Rodriguez, and then eventually decided to shift industries because I wasn't really feeling it. I felt like the more I worked in fashion, I realized like it wasn't really my calling. So moved to the flavor and fragrance industry because it was very close to my heart. And, again, since I was a kid, I'd been seeing it. And, it just seemed like the instinctual, like, next step for me. So I started working in the flavor side of a company called Givaudan. And then this opportunity came up in Paris. So my husband was also kind enough and obliged to move, with me. So we moved, and yeah, so Paris. But few months into working is when COVID started. So the first 4 months of the first lockdown, we were, in India at home in Kerala. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's how Gunam.
Yeah,
You started
exactly.
when you were here.
Yeah, so I started working on the concept and everything when I was here, but then we went back in, I believe, in August of that year. And then, so I started working with the manufacturer, the lab in France, because as I said, I wasn't really sure where I would be living. So I wanted to kind of hedge. So I wanted to build a product, first of all, not just for India. I wanted to build a product that I
Globally.
could sell globally someday. So obviously, because it was COVID, like things took a lot longer. So, obviously getting samples from there, everything
It's
was, yeah, took much
Itra
longer.
nala, it's been how long
Ooh,
that?
so I think about 3 years now
Okay.
since I started working on the brand. We went live December 2022, so 10 months ago is when we
Okay.
started selling. But I'd been working on it for almost 3 years now.
Great.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, that you're from a family called Sintite, which is the global supplier for spices and plant extracts.
Right.
Anything, little piece of advice that you remember
Yeah.
you got from your dad or your
Yeah.
family members? Anything that.
So yeah, I think there's a whole lot of things. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Taravada Vida, so with my grandfather, and like it was in the little things, right? So even with the word gunam, it was a word that he used all the time because he was always concerned about the utility of things. So
Okay.
even like funny instance where like we got like a new dog for the house, and he was just like what is his gunam, like even a kundenda gunam, so he was always like what is the utility of things, because he didn't believe in, and he was always a very he always had a preservation mindset. So for him, if something didn't was wasteful, and it didn't really make sense to him, so he didn't believe in those things. And he always, even the littlest of ways, made us think about what we want to do in the future. And he said, like, if you have an idea, and if you again, one, willing to put in the hard work for it, and you have faith, and you are willing to accept the fact that some things are not in your control, like he's just like, but you have to give it your all, so that's something that he's told me. And yeah, my dad in so many different ways as well, my grandmom, my mom as well, in the little things, is where I felt. So my dad was always about, again, he was sustainability has always been a thing for him, like right from recycling at home to moving to solar or electric. So I think those little things have taken me a long way. Like it's things that have in some ways been, ingrained in me. So, and the other thing was to not be afraid to like get your hands dirty. So when our first shipment arrived and we had to move things into our warehouse, like it was late in the evening when the goods were cleared from customs. So, we didn't have anyone to move. So we were the ones doing it. So it's those little things. So even in moments like that, like I don't feel like there's an issue, so it's just about not hesitating to like get involved, and especially when you're starting out, he always says like try to understand well, like all the different
He has
aspects.
taught you to be grounded, I should say,
Yeah, yeah,
huh?
in many sense, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Even though in instances when you're a child, you're just like, "What is this? It doesn't make sense." Now, when I look back, a lot of those things, in again in the littlest of ways, have had an impact on the way I think today.
Anybody who's been a good motivator or a supporter for you?
Uh,
Any?
yeah, my mom and dad for sure, and my husband as well. In many ways, he's always championing me from the back. So it's nice to get that support, and I feel like I've gotten a lot of opportunities, and I'm extremely grateful for that because I see a lot of people again who have great potential, again who are held back by someone or something. So I'm grateful that I've had this ecosystem that has again using my privilege to do something more, and I hope that one day I can build Gunam into a big enough company and like give people the same kind of opportunities that I've been given.
So, Elizabeth, do you believe in the practice of manifestation?
Okay. I suppose to some sense, a lot of people have the habit of like journaling, and that's something that I did for a while, but I realized it wasn't really for me because I'm always thinking about things. It's constantly in my head. So again, it's about for me finding. I'm a realist to some sense, so
You
I
have to make things
yeah,
happen.
exactly, yeah. So I'm always sort of been of that mindset, and it's how I've been trained. So if I again set out to do something, it's about trying to do all the little things that will help you achieve that. So I don't believe in again manifesting just in the little sense that okay, you want something and you will get it. You obviously have
To
to
work for it.
work for it.
Yeah, talking about social media, when I
Yeah,
looked up, I
yeah,
noticed that you do a lot of traveling.
right.
How much has it enriched you
Okay.
to this journey of, finding Gunam Beauty or, to
Okay.
that?
Um,
And what
so
are your hobbies also? You
all
can
right.
mention along with
Okay,
that.
sure, sure. So yeah, definitely a lot. It's something. So even school padikkumbodum, like every summer, like we would go on a family holiday somewhere. So it was something that I always look forward to, and my dad and mom always made it a point that when we travel, like we experienced everything. So yeah, everywhere I go, like I'm trying to always
Do you
like
always
learn.
go and have a look at the skincare
Yeah, I
side
love
of
it.
it?
Yeah, yeah. I love it. So going to like a Sephora or even like small. So recently, like I had a chance to go to Japan a few
Yeah,
months
I
ago.
saw.
So like I was in like a lot of these small stores, and it was really cool. Like the different. So it's so interesting because it was my first time in Japan, and like so you're experiencing something so new. Like obviously you have like more westernized Japanese approach. Like so you have a lot of these brands in the West that have a Japanese influence, but again seeing it there in real life is very different, right? So in practice, so yeah, of course I always try to draw inspiration uh, from
From
my travels. Yeah.
And what about hobbies, interest,
Hobbies.
anything?
So I still like to bake, but not as much because it's not good for my waist, and and I tried to. So I've picked up tennis again. So I used to play in school. So I'm back to. I go to RSC over there, and then I go, and it's fun. It's really like a way for me to de-stress as well, because I feel like sports something where, like everyone's on the same ground, so there's no who's it doesn't matter because ultimately it's about like you're all one. There's a lot of the spirit of sports. I feel like it teaches you a lot as well, like you have to be disciplined, you have to be focused, and yeah, so I love playing tennis. And yeah, and the littlest of like again traveling is something that I like as well. So any chance we get, wherever it is, we try to take some time
Take a
away.
break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's nice. So, like you said in Japan, that you noticed a lot of, the ingredients itself are very different.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the trend is with Korean skincare.
Hmm.
Have you noticed that? I mean, the youth, they call it the clean beauty. So, has it impacted you, or have you, taken something out of it?
Right. So, K beauty is like been trending for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
while now. So you have J beauty, Japanese beauty, you have G beauty, you
yeah.
have I beauty. So, yeah, there's always something or the other, and
Right.
always people want newness, right? So of course, there's a reason why Korean skincare has become so popular globally, because a lot of fundamental things that they pay attention to. So I feel though that from, your elaborate like 10, 15, 20 step Korean skincare routine, which may not necessarily work for
Indian
all
skin,
skin
huh?
types,
Oh.
or, exactly for maybe for our skin types, people have sort of crawl back and are finding sort of things that work for them. So now maybe people have 4 or 5 step routines, but you still use a lot of ingredients that are popularized by Korean beauty, etc. So yeah, definitely. So Korean beauty. So I'm not really trying to chase trends, rather find ingredients that one work well and have been used for a long time, and combining them with actives that are also well tested. So ultimately, you can try to chase after ingredients, but I feel like that's like a never ending cycle, So trying to find those ingredients that work well, have been tested, and, ultimately in formulations that are well tested and
Do
safe.
you try all the products of Gunam? That do you use them
Yeah,
very
of course.
often?
Yeah, I have to. I mean, so yeah, so the idea also behind Gunam is that we want to help people streamline skincare. So I feel like also COVID, around that time, people were realizing how unsustainable a lot of our practices were, right? So at one point, the like a shelfie was very cool, right? So you have these photos of someone's cabinet with like 15, 20, 100 products,
Yeah.
and it's no longer cool. At least I don't think it is, because most of the time a product, once you open it, like the shelf life is a couple of months or a year or tops, so you're just being wasteful and you're kind of adding to that cycle. So one of the important things that we talk about is helping people like streamline your routine. So we have a 4 step routine, and again, I always tell people, like, you still don't have to use all four
All
steps
for.
if you don't need it. If something works for you, well and good, like, continue it. And if you find that something is missing, you can try to add something else, so that's just been like a fundamental thing that we talk about. And of course, like, I still, so I was, as I was telling you before we started, like, it's always like when something important is coming up, like, I would
Yeah.
still break out. And so I let it not affect me so much. Like, I've accepted that this is my skin and this is, my body. So obviously I do, if I binge a little bit, or if I'm not working out regularly, or, there's a lot of factors, and sometimes you really don't know what it is.
It
So
is, yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate. But yeah, I definitely try to, again, educate people in the small ways as well. And I'm always learning also from people's experiences. So
So,
yeah.
if I may ask,
Yeah.
what is your skincare routine?
Okay. My skincare routine is sort of basic. I mean, cleanser in the morning. Then I use like a face cream if my skin is feeling a bit dry, and then sunscreen is non-negotiable. So I have very oily skin as well, and most days for work and other things, when I'm going out, I wear makeup. So, like, that's like a few, maybe an extra 5-10 minutes of doing that. So evenings are like I go in with a cleansing balm or a cleansing oil to remove my
Yeah.
makeup, and then a good cleanser. And some days, if I'm, say, going to tennis or whatever, I try to add like clean a bit better, because obviously sweat and dirt and heat and everything, like, as again, perfect recipe for
I know.
acne. So I just try to be mindful of that. And usually 2 to 3 steps. So some days, if I'm feeling on the drier side, I use like an oil as the last step, because I find that it helps kind of seal in the hydration. But otherwise, I just go end it with a moisturizer, and try to use an exfoliant most days. But again, some days, if I'm feeling on the drier side, then I don't use an exfoliant, just go in with a moisturizer and an oil to finish.
So, Elizabeth, every other day we see the birth of a new skincare brand. And then there are these seasonal players and also these trends like, K beauty, J beauty, and all that we mentioned of. All that is there. What is your USP?
Okay, so we, in a sense, talk about our sustainably sourced ingredients. So we work through my family with, like farms across the country, and we use, clean extraction methods. So, we have full traceability for the ingredients that we source from these farms. There's a lot of backward integration programs as well in place to ensure that these ingredients, like it's not just the quality of the ingredients, it's the land, the soil, the air, the well-being of the farmers, that all of those things are factored in. So that's something that we talk about through and through in our marketing. So we talk about sustainably sourced ingredients, extracted in India, and that are thoughtfully formulated and manufactured in France. So that is, in a sense, what is unique to us. And I don't think, we're the only ones doing something, that's combining, these
All these.
ingredients with roots in Ayurveda and, modern actives. There's a lot of brands doing it. So I don't think we're one of a kind by any chance, by any means, but, we try to, especially in the little ways, to also educate the customer as well. So we try to give examples because everyone is talking about sustainability, right? So there's a lot of greenwashing happening today. So we have an entire page on our website that's dedicated to sustainability. So we talk about why do we claim these ingredients are sustainable. So we give examples so that when we're not just making, just random claims.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's great. And this would be a very cliche question,
Yeah.
but where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? Or in terms of Gunam Beauty, where do you see or where do you place Gunam Beauty in 10 years?
Okay. So as I mentioned, like I've always, since I started working on the brand, I've dreamt for it to be like a global brand, not just something for India. I find that a lot of times what people get wrong is they try to make something very specific to a market. And again, for some brands, that's their strategy, it works. But I've always envisioned for Gunam to become a global brand. So we try to, the aim is to find ingredients, products that people can incorporate into their day-to-day lives that helps not just their skin, but also their overall health and wellness.
Do you consult anybody while taking major decisions?
So well, being, I try
Since
to
you
again,
come from a very,
yeah.
prominent business.
Yeah. So there's no like formal structure, obviously, to the way I do things. Like I try to, so now, like I consult with my team now, but before I had this team, like it was a lot of talking to different kinds of people. So again, whether it's like former colleagues, my dad, my mom, so it's a lot of different people. And again, you never know like what kind of advice you're going to get.
Like you just mentioned that you talk a lot to, your mom and dad and
Yeah.
everyone. Any valuable piece of advice that you remember of right now, or anything that you keep very close to your heart?
I think again going back to like being grounded, right? Because it's very easy, especially in today's day and age, to get lost in everything that's going around you. So again, family has always been really important to me, and again, even in building an organization, I try to create certain values that will help us grow. So I'm hoping that with all these little things that I've learned, that I can take the good things and create a happy workplace at the end of the day.
So, Elizabeth, coming to our last question, you are definitely very inspiring to a lot of budding entrepreneurs. Any piece of advice that you would like to give them, or what are your key, points that helped you with Gunam Beauty?
Uh, First of all, I don't think I'm anywhere done anything big to give advice to people, but yeah, little things. I feel like, especially when you're starting out, I think it's important to kind of have a grasp on all the little things that's happening. So whether it's like, I don't know, in my example, like logistics or accounts or finance. I mean, it's not my strength, but like making that effort to understand, because you shouldn't at any point in time feel like, you know,
As in
everything's
delegate your the responsibilities.
delegate, but also know what's going on, because at any point you shouldn't feel like
Yeah.
something is going to break because say a person
Somebody
leaves or
left.
there's
Yeah.
some kind of glitch. So having a grasp on things is very important, and at the end of the day, like creating a workplace that's also where people are allowed to like give you advice or feedback, again regardless of their role and stuff. And
So
these are like from a business perspective, I suppose. From personal, I think finding like balance, because as I mentioned, it's so easy to like get lost in today's day and age when you're constantly chasing numbers and money and all of those things. So finding balance, and again reflecting on what your true purpose or goal is, and kind of realigning to it if you feel like you're straying away from it. So, and again, finding meaningful friendships, like people who you can depend on. Again, I'm honestly, like, one of the best things about building this company has been like the relationships that I've built. So like, as much as people say like it's like no one wants to help you, or that's not really been the case. Like, I find that people in the oddest of places will kind of sometimes go
yeah,
out of their way
yeah.
to help you, and it's really fulfilling. So I'm happy for the relationships that I've built.
Developed, yeah, through all
Yeah,
these.
and I hope that even talking to you, right? So I know you're a skincare enthusiast yourself, so it's in the littlest of conversations and things that you never really know. So it's not about doing something expecting a certain outcome, but again, like having an open mind, and again learning from everyone, I think is important.
So, Elizabeth, it's wonderful talking to you. I've learned a lot of things from you.
I'm glad.
It's like reminding us to be grounded and so many things that you mentioned. It's been wonderful listening to it and, getting to know a lot of things. All the very best to you
Thank you so
and
much.
to Gunam
Thanks
Beauty.
again for having me, and super happy. And yeah, you were extremely easy to talk to. And
I'm
yeah,
glad.
this is definitely something new for me. So thanks for giving me the platform to
Thank you
talk
so
and to share
much.
my story so far.